and welcome to this review of my Robotron K7673.02 keyboard. This keyboard was a donation from a viewer, thanks again May. It's been a little while since I've covered a vintage keyboard, and this one is from 1989, so we're pretty well covered there. Robotron was a major East German electronics manufacturer who made just about everything at the time, including rebrands of other suppliers. It was divided up and liquidated about half a year after the Berlin Wall came down, but for about 20 years they were a major company with over 60,000 employees and divisions in Dresden and about 12 other cities. If you lived in East Germany in the 70s or 80s and you owned something electronic, there was a good chance it was made by
VEP Robotron, ja!
I've previously reviewed this thing, the K7631, which was another Robotron keyboard, which used old Hall effect switches, but by comparison this K7673 looks a lot less exotic. That said, it's still a pretty interesting creature I figure would be cool to take a look at, as it's a delightful case of classic German over-engineering. It came with the EC1834 computer, the P8000 and the NPC8, all of which looked delightfully depressing, and it used a type of elastomeric switches that were much cheaper to produce than the K7631's Hall-based keyboard. In fact, the Hall manufacture comes across as a lot cheaper, so I'm gonna guess that the systems they came with were more budget-oriented as well. The build quality is a lot simpler than that of the K7631, for example. That one had a bizarre build comprised of a metal pan under a top made out of dense polyurethane foam of all things. In the 7673's case, it's just a plastic shell with some screws and a metric fuck ton of plastic clips at the side, and look at this, it flexes quite a bit as well. The build is by no means impressive, especially for the time, although it's not the worst build I've ever seen. Irrelevant but weird detail, there is an overpowering 80s smell inside the case, so it's actually preserved the decade's scent extraordinarily well. By the way, while we're looking at the housing, here's the back of the keyboard, which bears a metal plate with the type number stamped into it plus the serial number, as well as
Robotron Elektroschaltgeräte Auerbach hergestellt in der DDR.
Was that alright? No, that was terrible. You're butchering my beautiful language.
Usefully, it is also marked with the precise manufacture date, 24th of October 1989. Or in imperial units, the 10th of Vigintiquatember in the year of 213 AM, you know, Anno Americana. It weighs 1.4 kilograms, which is actually not bad for a keyboard this size, especially considering it's made out of all plastic, although it is less than half the weight of the 7631 I showed earlier. It comes with a serial connector, and from what I understand it uses some sort of weird protocol I can't use with my modern computer at the moment, but that's okay, it's not that great feeling anyway. Much more interesting than the build quality though are the switches. They are what Robotron refer to as elastomer type, and they're quite extraordinary. At heart they consist of a conductive rubber pad over a double forked contact point printed on the PCB below it. When pressed onto the PCB, the rubber would close the contacts and signal a key press. The Robotron Museum website, which was very helpful in making this video by the way, notes that these switches were highly sensitive to dirt and dust contamination, or Verschmutzung, my favorite German word. Now this makes sense, as the contact pads and spiral prints are relatively unprotected and any dirt or dust could obstruct the pad's path. The system of conductive rubber over intertwined contacts is far from unique. It was used in quite a few keyboards over time. However, they were generally executed as simple rubber dome keyboards where the domes would have these pads stuck to the bottom of them. However, the Robotron takes this rather simple idea and makes it bizarrely complex for some reason. They actually consist of discrete modules, very similar to Topra, except they're riveted to a PCB below, and they seem to incorporate some sort of dampening foam, which is again used on a per switch basis, rather than just being one giant mat that covers the whole assembly. Also, instead of rubber domes, it puts the conductive pad on a round plastic slider, which is inside of another round plastic slider, and which has a coil spring in it, inside of another coil spring. I guess the inner one is used for over travel and the larger outer one is a return spring. It's a kind of messy arrangement, and even if you used a slider instead of a rubber dome, I have no idea why you'd include all these extra parts, which seems completely unnecessary to me. But hey, it's German, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
We must add more parts to the switch, otherwise it will not function, probably.
The key feels actually pretty shit. I don't think it's actually scratchy, but the key feel is weird in a way that makes it feel as if it were scratchy, and it's very undefined somehow. I rightly can't even make out whether it's supposed to be linear or tactile because of how scratchy it is. I guess it's the East German equivalent to Cherry MX Brown. By the way, fun fact, both Robotron and Cherry made keyboards in places called Auerbach. In some ways, I guess it has parallels with Fujitsu's Peerless switches, which were an absurdly complex rubber dome switch, although that one used a spring-tensioned plastic sock to create a kind of clicky noise. Perhaps the closest relative, though, is the Mitsumi Hybrid switch, which was also a conductive slider design, this time employing a buckling rubber sleeve. Whoever said that old keyboards couldn't be interesting never looked at the right keyboards. The keycaps are double-shot ABS, and they're very low profile for some reason. They come with a simple all-caps font, and they actually look kind of cool in my opinion. The layout is largely the same as a modern German keyboard, except for the lack of Windows keys and some messing around with the modifiers. The control is normally where tab goes, and it's got two different alt keys, a normal alt and an alt 1-2 Polizei. Also, these two keys at the top here are non-standard, and finally it's got a 00 on the numpad here. Overall, it's a really cool look into the past where manufacturers were still kinda trying to figure out what worked and what didn't. These switches are so complicated that, although I'm sure they were cheaper to make than their Hall effect switches, they definitely could have saved noticeably more by simplifying this. But then I guess we wouldn't have this video, right? That's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.